All right, friends, today we're going to talk more about drawing in Illustrator. As we all know, Illustrator is a vector program, and its main goal is to help us draw. But there's some really neat things that Illustrator does that helps us draw more effectively. So today we're going to talk about draw modes, we're going to talk about live paint, we're going to talk about making our own brushes using the blob brush, which we haven't talked about, and then using different types of brushes that are available to you in the program. So first, let's start with draw modes, and I'm going to zoom in here. When we're talking about using drawing modes, these are available to you at the bottom of your toolbar. And if you hover over, you're going to see them. Draw normal, draw behind, and draw inside. And it's Shift D on your keyboard to move between these. So I'm just going to start with a real basic circle. With the circle, it can be any color, any property that you want. It's no big deal at all. I'm going to just choose a color. I'm going to leave my stroke on, and I'm going to make a couple of copies of this. So I've got these 3 circles, and I'm just going to get them positioned here so that I can manipulate them. Once we have our drawing and we're ready to start adding in, I'm going to use my paintbrush for today. And my paintbrush is just set on black, which is great. And I'm going to be set to draw normal. And I'm just going to draw a little bit just so you can see that when I draw normal, it just draws exactly like you think it's going to. With my selection tool, I'm going to select the draw behind, and I'm going to switch to this draw behind mode and then go back to my paintbrush, which remember is B on my toolbar. And this time when I draw, look what happens. Now that one's neat, but this one's neater in my opinion. So I'm going to switch over to draw inside. Remember, that's also Shift D. And you're going to see that I've got these little dash lines now. And watch what I can do. Tell me that's not neat. So just demonstrate that you can move between these different modes, but make sure you go back to draw normal to get ready for number 2, our live paint. I do have the directions for you on all of this over here that you can use, and we're going to switch and do number 2 with my my live paint option. So I'm going to just use, you can use your paintbrush, you can use a pencil, it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to use my brush since I've already got that here. And I'm going to draw a 5-pointed star and just make sure it connects. And I'm going to select my star. I'm going to go to Object, Live Paint, and I'm going to say Make. I'm going to go ahead and say OK. And you'll notice that it changed. Now if I go to my Live Paint bucket, I never remember where that is, y'all. You have to bear with me. I actually put a little drawing to show me where it was, if I remember correctly. Yep, it's under my shape builder. It's always the last place I look. Live paint bucket. And now what it's going to do is it's going to let me arrow through all of my different swatches. So maybe if I have a swatch group, which we've already practiced, that you really like this one, I'm going to choose this one. Now I can arrow through those different colors quickly and be able to paint a very complex design. This is really convenient if you are working through something where you know you have a lot of different sections to paint and you know that everything needs to be the same color. Live paint can be very, very convenient to help you move more effectively as you're working. So live paint. Now let's talk about brushes. So I'm going to pull up my brushes panel. There we go. And what I've given you is I've given you 2 different vector flowers, just some silly flowers that I made in the program. And what we're going to do is we're going to make first an image art brush. So I'm going to start by hitting the new brush, and I'm going to choose an art brush, and I'm going to say OK. When that art brush panel comes up, you're going to get some choices over here, and I got to be able to see what I've asked y'all to do. And what we're going to do is we're going to set a couple of different things and a couple of different options. Sorry. And we're going to choose an art brush. We're going to name it Red Flowers. Okay. And then I'm going to make the stroke. I'm going to say scale. I think I asked you guys to, stretch to fit the stroke length. We're going to change it to a minimum of 80%. 80% for my, click on new brush. We're going to choose 80% of the width. And then we're going to say OK. And you'll see I had one already because I've already done this exercise, but I'm gonna select these 2 lines, and I want you to see what happens when I change. See how it changes the line? You also can just straight draw with that particular brush, an art brush, but it does typically warp things. Sometimes I just want that pattern repeated over and over. So that is when we make a scatter brush. So I'm gonna again make a new one. I'm gonna go to my window, my brushes, and this time I'm gonna choose a scatter brush and I'm gonna say okay. And again, I've got some settings in here for you. We're gonna change our scale, our size to 75%. I'm gonna change my spacing to 120, not 1120, 120. I'm gonna change my rotation here. I'm gonna change that to 25 degrees. And then I'm gonna change my colorization. I'm gonna switch that over to tints and shades because I want you to see what it looks like when you change your colorization. Because now when I choose these, it's gonna add copies and you'll see that they're slowly rotating. And you can double click if you're like, "Ooh, that's not enough rotation for me. I really want it to rotate." And I'm gonna say apply to my strokes, and then it's really gonna start to shift and change. But this lets you create really neat things. And again, I just have it on tens. If you had it on none, for example, um, you'll see that it changes the colors and things like that. Yours should look like mine when you're all said and done. Number 5 talks about using the blob brush, the blob brush. So I've just got some directions in here for you, but pretty much what I want you to understand, and the brush lives under here, is when you use just a regular paintbrush. Oop, let me get to a brush that isn't an art brush or a scatter brush. When you use a paintbrush like normal and I select it, it's got a path to it, right? It doesn't show you the edge of this. The difference between a paintbrush and a blob brush is when I use a blob brush, there isn't a path. It is an object. There's no stroke because if I added a stroke, it would just go around the edge of the color here. So a blob brush creates that's just a free form object. So when I draw in here with my blob brush and I select it, it's just an object. Then I can even take my eraser and divide these into 2 separate objects, which is really neat that I can separate out my blobs. So practice just using your blob. Make sure that you have the objects selected before you try to move them apart. Number 6, 7, and 8 is gonna all be the same thing. You're just gonna be using different brushes through the brush library. So I'm gonna pull up in my brush and then there's my library. In the directions, it's gonna show you which grouping you need to go find these in. So borders, border geometric, 14, artistic paintbrush splash, and then decorative scatter, and confetti. Confetti, I will admit, is my favorite. So decorative scatter, confetti, and then you can draw with that. So just find all of these different borders for me and just show that you can navigate finding the geometric and the splash brush and all of that, and just draw me a little something just to show me that you can do it. All of these techniques in the Drawing in Illustrator worksheet is, again, our goal is to make you work more efficiently, work smarter, not harder. So hopefully some of this is giving you some inspiration of ways that you can use it when you're doing your projects. All right, hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you turn in your worksheet when you're all done. Thanks.